see everybody there on the screen. It's kind of funny when I look on my phone in Facebook, it cuts, you only see like this.
Yeah.
But if I look on my iPad or the computer, you can see the whole thing. You can see the whole audience. So I don't know what to what to do. Anyway, we're in Exodus chapter 8, continuing on with the plagues. Last week we went over the first plague, the water. The water turned into blood. This week it's some more plagues that's on it. I think we covered 2 more tonight. Chapter 8 covers the frogs. We'll start with frogs, and then it'll go on, I think, to the lice or flies, whatever they called it. I'm getting ready to sneeze, I think. Anyway. And the Lord spoke to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'Thus saith the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all your territory with frogs. So the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house, into your bedroom, on your bed, to the houses of servants, on your people, into your ovens, into your kneading bowls, and the frogs shall come up on you, on your people, and all your servants.'" Same thing. So instead of going, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, so he turned back, and God had, after a couple times, Moses is starting to learn. Okay, don't take it personally. God told me it was going to happen, so we go back and see what God wants to do next. And God has told him he's going to make this kind of a progression. He's going to tell him, and we see this in just a minute, in just a few words. Last week he said, "I'm going to make you of God unto Pharaoh." We'll see that here in just a few minutes, because Pharaoh is already starting to see, okay, this is something that's a little different. I'm not quite, because it's constantly coming back to him, these different times that he's going into it. Said God could have brought about that terrible last plague early in the series, as far as killing everybody, killing all the firstborn, but he didn't. He did not determine. He did this for a purpose, and the purpose was to give Pharaoh time to repent. And also it shows that Pharaoh, who God is. Pharaoh asked the question when they first met, "Who is this God? Who is your God? I don't know who he is." God wants to show him, "I'm over all that you have." Now this is what the Lord told Moses to do. In each one of these we see Moses gets the message, and then he has to deliver it to Aaron, and Aaron delivers it to Pharaoh. So it tells him that he's going to threaten with a plague of frogs. The Egyptian goddess Heket, or Heget, however you want to say it, was always pictured with the head of a frog, the Egyptian god. Okay, so it had a head of a frog. In the ancient Egyptians, frogs were considered sacred and could not be killed. So you get all these frogs that's coming up, or going to be coming up. They can't do anything with them. It's kind of like the Indians. Cows are sacred, so they don't want to kill a cow. You don't want to mistreat a cow. That's kind of what this is on the frogs. So he's making a point to them. Egyptians worshipped the frog as a female goddess because frogs were common around the Nile, and they reproduced rapidly and became amphibians, which were a part of 2 worlds, both the land and the sea, or the water. Brother Epson, when you read 5 and 6 and 7. It's on the second page, yeah.
It says, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your rod over the streams, over the rivers, and over the ponds, and cause frogs to come up over the land of Egypt." So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt, and the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought up frogs on the land of Egypt.
Okay. So we see that, again, he told Moses, Moses told Aaron, Aaron's telling Pharaoh what's going to happen, or what does happen. And we see that the magicians do the same thing. All they're doing is replicating what God has done so far. We've seen that, and that just makes it worse. If they can make more frogs, why? You know, they need to be making it different. Like we said last time, they need to make the frogs disappear. Well, they can't do that. You know, it just, they're not able to do that.
On all of these, I can't even remember, haven't seen them. These didn't affect the Israelites, did they?
Now these two. We'll see in the next one it doesn't. It goes back and it does not affect, it says in the land of Goshen, which Goshen was where the majority of the Israelites lived. So we see that on the next plague. But this one it did. We don't know that it didn't. Okay, it didn't say that it did or didn't, but in the next one it said that it didn't. So I'm assuming that the first two plagues even occurred upon Israel. Now it was the Nile and all the rivers around there. If it wasn't for the waters, you know, if it didn't happen everywhere, then all the Egyptians would just go over here and get the water. If it was in, you know, in Goshen. But it doesn't really mention that. So here we're thinking that it did include everywhere. It says the Lord, though he is the Lord of hosts, he has no need of powerful armies, the ministry of angels, or the thunderbolts of justice to punish a sinner or a sinful nation. The frog or the fly in his hands is a sufficient instrument of vengeance. That's from Clark. So there are many things that are here on the earth that we don't want to deal with. Just like Bertha shivered new frogs. Well, it could be anything.
Not on me.
Yeah. Well, these are going to be all over them. And, you know,
Open up your oven.
in their ovens, in their beds, everywhere they're going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where they're going to be. So we see that it's just going to be everywhere they turn. They can't do anything without having a frog, and they're sitting on them and squishing them and walking on them and everything else. And that's, you know, it's just they're everywhere, and they can't get rid of them. They can't be free from them. Okay. Iris, you want to read the next 8 through 15?
I'll try.
Okay.
Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, Entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go, that they may sacrifice to the Lord. And Moses said to Pharaoh, Accept the honor of saying when I shall intercede for you, for your servants and for your people, to destroy the frogs from you and your houses, that they may remain in the river only. So he said, Tomorrow, and he said, Let it be according to your word, that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. And the frogs shall depart from you, from your houses, from your servants, and from your people. They shall remain in the river only. Then Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried out to the Lord concerning the frogs which he had brought against Pharaoh. So the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses, out of the courtyards, out of the fields. They gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank.
Mm-hmm.
But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not heed them, as the Lord had said.
So in the early part of this,
They stank.
they stank. They stunk. Yeah.
I think
Stank.
further to home to it stank too.
It says Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron. Okay? So he's now Okay, come here. I've had enough of this. And then he says, entreat thy Lord, or you talk to God and tell him to take these frogs away. So here he's making Moses his God, as far as he can't do anything about it. He's the God of Egypt. He's got all these magicians. All they can do is replicate them. They can't take them away. Okay, and Moses said, okay, what do you want me to do? He said, take the frogs away everywhere except the river. He said, okay, you got anything else? And then what does he say? Tomorrow. Why tomorrow? I want it today. Get these frogs out of here today. But he did.
Now.
Yeah, now. But he said tomorrow. I'm not sure why he said tomorrow. If he's thinking that, I don't know. Maybe it's too soon. It can't. I don't really know why he said
Or
that.
he wants Pharaoh to suffer more.
Well, now that Pharaoh was giving him. He told him. Moses was asking him what he wanted, is the way I interpret it. And then later on that comes on to see, because that is what happens later on. Moses tells him something, he says, okay, it's going to happen, and it happens like the next day. Or in the one last case, it happens overnight. The people die, and they tell him right then, get out, you got to get out of here.
Well, that was a mess, wasn't it, with all the frogs?
Yeah, just think of that. Frogs stacked everywhere,
And I
out in
wonder
the
why
street.
they didn't want them going in the water.
They wanted to have frogs.
Oh, I see.
They still revered frogs,
Well,
see?
not that many.
Well, no, but they just didn't want them. They wanted them, but they wanted them where they're supposed to be, in the river.
Okay.
Okay? Don't kill all the frogs, that's what he's saying.
10%
See, Moses, or Aaron, I'll get it right in a minute, Pharaoh, he's like, don't kill all the frogs. Frogs are good. We want frogs, But they, in their religion, they needed some frogs. So that's why he said, but,
Because they're
just
worshipful.
keep them there. Yeah, but don't, have them in my bed and in the, my coffee jar and everything else where I'm at, so he did, he, talk
They
or
had to
intercede to him.
Kill them to eat them.
That's right.
That's probably all they had to eat by the time everything was frogged out.
And one thing that didn't happen, they didn't just disappear. They died. And it takes a couple of days for them things to start stinking. So they'd been there a while, and they had to start, shoveling them out of their houses and shovel them out in the streets and try to get them where they can out of the fields everywhere. And we see this pattern develop. It's already, we've only gone through 2 of them, but it repeats itself. Okay, all down through this.
But maybe mention here, that Thomas, Ricky, about the cleanliness. They were a particular mark of the Egyptians, and yet
Oh yeah.
they had all these dead frogs laying around. And
Yeah, they wanted to be clean. They wanted to do all this, but it did. They just made them sick to their stomach, basically. The land stank. It gives a hint how nauseating it was. I don't know if you've ever been, when we was out here mowing here a couple weeks ago, I was weed eating and I could smell something bad back there, and I didn't know what it was, and I was weed eating over there, and then I saw this thing just kind of moving. There's a possum over there.
Yeah.
And it's dead. And it's like,
And it was moving?
well, it was the vermin on it moving, the worms
Oh.
and the maggots and all that stuff that was moving on it. Yeah, I mean, it was dead, but it was still, that's how I noticed it. If it hadn't been moving, I wouldn't even have seen it because it was so covered with it. But the dog was going crazy, and I was just weed eating. I'm like, man, what stink? Oh, golly, there it is. And dumb me, I had to go kick it to see what it was. Then they just went everywhere, So it says, Pharaoh increased his guilt. His vows heaped up his transgressions. He forgot his promises, but God didn't. They were laid in store against him. Because it says, after this happened and after it died, he, kind of says he went back to what he hardened his heart again. So as to Pharaoh, it's a story of a strong will making itself stupid. while all the way until the condition was utterly beyond hope of remedy. God gave him an opportunity to use that strong will and surrender, but he didn't. He didn't want to be made kind of fun of or be made put down. He was still the leader of Egypt, so he had to be in control.
He didn't want to be embarrassed.
He didn't want to be embarrassed, that's right. Bertha, you want to read 16, 17?
Okay. So the Lord said to Moses, say, Aaron, stretch out your rod and strike the dust to the land, so that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And they did so. For Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and struck the dust of the earth, and it became lice on man and beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all of the land of Egypt.
Okay, this is the third plague we said last week. The third plague comes upon the Egyptians with no warning. Okay, before he kind of warned them, this is what's going to happen. Here he didn't. He just said, you go do it. You go strike the dirt. You go strike this, and they will turn to lice. So the dust. Can you imagine that? If how much dust there is, if all that turned to lice. I've never had lice that I'm aware of, but I do have purple martins, and the purple martins get what they call mites, and you can see them on their house. As they get older, and when they get ready to fly, they kind of drive them out because it's like little fleas or little bugs on the house, and you can't see them, or little bitty spiders, if you want to call them that. They're not really spiders, but when I take that gourd down, or just open the gourd to look at it, so unscrew it and look at it and stick it back, they're crawling all over my hands and stuff because they are just so much, so many of them. That's just where they breed in the birds. They get on their feathers and, I don't know what purpose they serve. Probably drive them crazy, but.
When you was reading this, I thought about youth camp. I have,
oh yeah.
being a camp coordinator and all that kind of stuff. We spent some nights all night long with 2 or 3 kids.
Washing their heads.
Washing all their clothes.
Yep, everything.
Use
The
that
sheets.
rid, okay.
Yep.
Just using that over and over
Yep,
again.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens today in school systems still.
It does.
So he struck the dirt with his rod, and here again on these, it's Aaron doing this. A lot of times we get the opinion that it's Moses, but Aaron's doing what Moses was told to do by God. Okay? So he struck it, say to Aaron, stretch out your rod, strike the dust of the land, and he did it. This plague struck at the heart of all the Egyptian worship, especially at their priests. The Egyptian priesthood was extremely careful, again, about their hygiene and their cleansing, and an infestation of lice made them unable to worship their gods. So they couldn't get away from it. Like sometimes you think, you get there and you can get a little respite from it somewhere. Here it wasn't. The plague of lice was upon every beast too. So you can imagine your horses and cows and everything was just itching and scratching. The gods of Egypt would not receive the sacrifice of lice-infested animals, and Jewish wouldn't either. They had to be cleansed. They had all that stuff. It had to be. So this essentially stopped their sacrifices for the Egyptians. So this was really a big deal. We may not think of it so much. It's like, okay, yeah, they all got it. To them, they can't worship their gods now. God has put a stop. He said, look, you're not going to be able to do this. And as we go on, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Okay? Harold, you want to read 18 and 19 for us?
Okay. Now the magicians so worked with their enchantments, enhancements, to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice on man and beast. Then the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. But Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them, just as the Lord had said.
I don't understand. He's recognizing this is God. This is the hand of God. This, our magicians can't replicate it. So this is the first one, the third plague. they can't do it. Their magicians cannot create the lice from the dust.
I thought that maybe Pharaoh might have think he could outweigh God.
It might have, but
I mean, even knowing that God's more powerful, but I wonder if he thought he could just outweigh him.
I can guarantee you, when you get bit by a mosquito or chiggers, do they have very big whelps on you?
Yeah.
They do on me.
Yeah.
My mom and I were just the same. I can get a bite and it'll just big old place and itch like the dickens. I mean, just itch and itch and itch. Just imagine if he was covered with it like that, itching. You could not get any rest. You couldn't sleep. You couldn't do anything else. So there was no outweighing.
But once he got Aaron or Moses to stop it, then he was stubborn anyway.
Yeah, but he hadn't had them to stop it. He said, look, our guys can't do this. You know, this is the finger of God. But he did not say he wanted it stopped right here at this point. He just hardened his heart and he didn't heed them just as the Lord said.
It shows you too that there's two powers in this world.
Mm-hmm.
The power of evil and the power of good. But the power of evil cannot overcome God.
That's right.
I mean, it can cause problems.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But in the final, and you know what, the people, again, even though Pharaoh's heart was hard, don't you know the people were getting sick and tired? Every time they turned around, something else was happening.
That's right.
They were wanting them to get out pretty bad.
It kept getting a little worse.
Yeah.
Each time it became a little bit more than what they, could handle.
But just look at us. Look, sometimes God tries to deal with us. Look, get hard-headed. You have to do it
Mhm.
over and over again, and
And we don't know. Go ahead, Harold.
Well, I was gonna ask, do we feel that Moses had an idea of how many plagues it was gonna be? Because God had already told him he was gonna harden his heart.
Right.
So
Right.
Moses, to some degree, in my thinking, couldn't be surprised about Pharaoh's heart being,
Right.
and he knew there was gonna be the plagues. I don't necessarily know whether Moses had an idea of how many that was gonna step forward. I don't know what all God revealed to him
Talk to him.
ahead of time of what was going.
He-
But Moses couldn't have been surprised that he was being
No.
hardened on this after God had already told him.
No.
Although, I sometimes think that we know what God's telling us to do, and we still don't.
We don't even listen. Yeah, that's right.
Listen to it like we should, but
Well, he gave him two signs when he, showed himself to him at the burning bush. And then he showed those same two signs when it first started off. It just happened to be 10. Now, the numbers are important. If you go back and look, 3 is a perfect number, being the Trinity. 7 is another perfect number. And 10 is also a perfect number that is significant, I'll say, in the Old and the New Testament. So we can see, Moses may have known or he may not have known. Same thing with the 10 Commandments. Why is it just 10? Could have been 20 or whatever. And you've seen those funny commercials where he drops one and he said, 10 Commandments, not 20, things. But we don't know. But it serves a purpose, and numbers are a lot more important to the people in the Old Testament and some in the New Testament too, also, than it is to us. We don't, because we're so, I think, when I don't know what grade it was, whenever they started teaching us that there's more than just the decimal system, the 10-digit system, the binary system and the hexadecimal system, that's probably in high school, I guess, I don't know. But I couldn't wrap my mind around the 010111001111. That's just the number whatever it comes out to be. And what's even harder is the hexadecimal system, where you go up and you got the 10, then you start on ABCs. So, I think we are more comfortable with the 10-based decimal system and that's, to me, that makes it less significant if you understand what I mean. Where back then, it meant a lot to them, because I don't know what kind of system they had back then.
I was just thinking they had trouble with the 10, and then he cut it down to 2. We
Oh,
still
yeah.
had trouble with the 2.
That's
I mean,
right.
they cover all the 10, but
Yeah.
don't you think though too, that God was not only, he was working on Moses too, because Moses is getting ready to go 40 years of
That's
pretty
right.
tough sledding, okay? All the complaining about the people and all those things, you know, God told him this was gonna happen, but still yet he needed some fortitude and something, he needed to know God made himself real.
And I think, he's starting to get the opinion, like I said earlier. Okay, he told me this was gonna happen, he did it, now I gotta go back to God. That's what he wanted him to do. He wanted him to rely upon it. There is no way one man could move up to 2 million people or more from one place to another. That's logistically, at least back then. Today, I don't even know if one person could do it. Maybe with social media, things like this, but they didn't have that back then. So, to me, it was a God thing that it was happening. And of course, it's God doing it, but he had to rely upon God. And we see that as we go through the 40 years. He's right there with God on a lot of these things. As the 40 years wears on, it wears on him too, we see. We all get tired of doing, of course, you're 120 years old, you kind of get a little testy
We're all
on
gonna
some
live to
things.
that.
Yeah, that's right. Janet, you wanna read 20 through 23?
And the Lord said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he cometh forth to the water, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy houses, and the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground whereon they are. Did you want more?
No, well, yeah, you can go ahead and read 22 and 23. They got it
And I will
lumped together.
sever in that day the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, to the end thou mayest know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. And I will put a division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow shall this sign be.
Always on tomorrow.
Yeah, it's always on tomorrow. So we see here that he is saying
Procrastinate.
it's just going to be the Egyptians that's going to suffer in this particular case, this regional area. He's going to put a division between them. Let's see what it says there. It doesn't say anything. So, after the lice, and Pharaoh was entreating Moses, or telling him, pleading with Moses to take this away, then God's saying, go to Moses, come up, rise up early. Now you go to him. And we see this, we talked about last week, timing, how this happened. Well, here it happened, and then he's telling him, okay, it's finished today, tomorrow rise up. So I think this is pretty bang, 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 bang. It may have taken a few days, like I said, the frogs died. It took a few days for the frogs to die, and they died instantly, but it took them a while to start stinking. They had to clean it up. It took a few days. They may have recuperated it, but I think this is all over a time frame of maybe 2-3 months at most. But I may be wrong. We're going through this and trying to find out if there's any timing there. But this is, like I said, the first time that he talks about where Goshen was. I was going to get a map for that, and I ran off and forgot it. See what it says here. Now, what they show in the land of Goshen, they've got how Egypt goes and where the Nile comes up, right there, all that floodplain, so that's gonna be low area. So the Egyptians probably, they may farm there, just like, kinda like we do. They may farm there, but they don't live there. That's where the Egyptians, the Israelites, was kinda all in that big fan around that, in that portion.
Where they made the bricks,
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, pulled that loose. So it's in order that you may know that I am the Lord in the midst of the land. To ignore someone demonstrates hatred just as much as attacking them does. If Pharaoh thought he could ignore God and his messenger, he was wrong, and the plagues would continue. We see this now, coming upon this, the fourth plague. He thought, maybe I can wait him out. He told them to go away or to take the lice away. He did. Now they got flies everywhere. To me, flies are, I don't know, worse than lice, but just all around your head and everything all the time.
You ask yourself, why are they even here?
And it could be, one thing that I really didn't like when I was laying rock, those horse flies. Those are big old flies, and they will bite you. That's right, and they hurt. Yeah, one's out there in the sun. So it could have been those type of flies. I don't know what type of flies they were, but I'm guaranteed it didn't help.
flies, you got maggots.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine a few million of those?
That's right. Upon every place, they just everywhere. It's kind of like out there, that possum just crawling all over that thing. Possum, something, whatever it was. Anyway, it says, if only we will let the Spirit of God work unhindered, He will effect an inward division. Our tastes and desires, our hopes and aims will become different, and we shall be aware of a growing dissimilarity between ourselves and the world. We can see that today. It's just like, these people don't have any common sense. Why are you shooting yourselves in the foot doing things like this? Now, I'm not just saying that's common sense. The Holy Spirit also gives us an extra movement or an extra guidance on what to do from God. And some of this thing is like, why in the world would you want to do that? But we have to learn to still rely upon it. That's what Moses was learning in this particular time, because a little later on you talked about, it wears on him, and it does, because he was taking care of all the little details. And his father-in-law said, you're not doing yourself any good. You need to get some help. And he got the leaders of the tens and the leaders of the hundreds. So that's what Moses, God didn't tell him directly everything, what he has to do. God didn't tell us everything. He tells us, go do this. And sometimes we have to figure out how. He told Jerry Chalk to go to Russia. Jerry couldn't even speak English. Let alone.
And where would the money come from?
Hey Diane, what you doing? All this thing. And now,
If you guys knew Jerry.
Yeah.
Okay. The
But look what he's done
idea
over in
that guy
Europe.
can stand there, okay, and he's not, I don't mean he was dumb.
No,
but
he just-
all the slang he
used and everything else.
And then just whip that stuff off. He's been a translator at the.
oh yeah.
At the General
He
Assembly.
sent a video of this last time when he was over Ukraine to me, and he's just up there blabbering away, in Russian or whatever.
Ukrainian or whatever.
Yeah, whatever speech it is. I think it's Russian. But he's just going 90 to nothing, and it's just amazing to me that transformation that happens when we allow God to do what He tells us to. We go and do what God says.
Well, I know he uses a translator, but I'm sure he's learned some of it too. But
Oh yeah, he's like he is the translator.
oh, so he is now.
Yeah, for some of the people that goes to the assembly when he's there.
I do like to listen to him.
Mm-hmm.
I like it when he comes here.
So yeah. Somebody else have anything or?
My Bible's got some commentary. It
Uh-huh.
says that God does make a distinction between the heathen and His people.
Right.
When judgment comes. And
Right.
I'm glad that God does make a distinction for his people
Mhm.
and allows them not to have to always go through the things that, I mean, we still have to go through things, but sometimes it's not the same as the ungodly.
Sometimes we can see something and learn from that. When we see it happening to people, then we say, okay, I don't want any part of that. I'm not going to do that. That's what God is doing here, in my opinion, that he's teaching the Israelites also. That look, you obey me and I'll protect you from this. Because when it comes to that 10th plague, they've got to have a lot of faith that they've got to do what Moses tells them to do, what God told Moses to do, or their young ones will die. So they have to put a lot of faith. It's building everybody's faith. God's leading them by the hand through these plagues. If he just did it in one fatal swoop, there are, we don't know this, but I've said it before, there's probably a lot of Egyptians that are converted. We read last week that some of their servants left after they've seen some of the things happen. They didn't even want a part of it. So they're starting wanting to serve God. Because they're seeing this God, hey, he's stronger than that Egyptian God over there. This guy tells them what to do. God tells them and it happens. And Pharaoh talks to Moses and boom, it happens the next day.
Well, it's just me, but I'm thinking, all right, God's teaching the Israelis too.
Mhm.
We're talking about the first two plagues. It doesn't say that they did or didn't, but
Right.
I got to assume that they felt the plagues too.
That's right, I think
and
so.
they seen it, the third one, okay, God's taking care of us
Mm-hmm.
and going forth there. But I feel confident in the first two plagues. He was also teaching Moses again, like you said, on the 2 million people. I can just imagine the amount of complaining that the Israelites were doing to Moses.
Yeah.
Why are we going through this too? And one thing I'd say, he was being trained to deal with the millions of people and the problems that they were going to.
Because they had to see.
It just
Yeah.
wore him out. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
what it was. Verse 24 said, and the Lord did so. Thick swarm of flies came into the house of Pharaoh, into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted because of the swarm of flies. In 25, 26, 27. Then Pharaoh called for Pharaoh. Here again, he's calling them. And Moses and Aaron said, go sacrifice to your God in the land. He's ready for them to go. Okay, you can go do what you said. And Moses said, it's not right to do so, for we'd be sacrificing the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. Meaning, we don't want to hurt the Egyptians' gods. Not saying that we don't want, in the Egyptians' eyes, that's an abomination, what we're going to do. So we want to go 3 days journey. That's why I told him in the first place, I want to go 3 days journey. The Egyptians, unless they want to come with us, that way they won't be, in their eyes as bad people. An abomination to them. If we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, then will they not stone us? And that's what kind of they're afraid of, and not afraid being that they want to be, they're trying to win the Egyptians too. Okay, God's trying to show Pharaoh and the Egyptians who God is. We've said that before. So Moses tells them, we'll go, but we're going 3 days journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he commands us. So Moses is telling them, that's what we're going to do. We're not going to do this any at all. In the last few scriptures, 28 through 32. So Pharaoh said, I will let you go, that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Not only you shall not go very far away, intercede for me. Then Moses said, indeed, I'm going out from you. I will entreat the Lord that the swarms of fly may depart tomorrow from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. But let Pharaoh not deal deceitfully any more in not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. So Moses went out from Pharaoh, entreated the Lord, and the Lord did according to the word of Moses. He removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh from his servants, from his people, no one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart at this time also, neither would he let the people go. So again, Pharaoh, he went back on his word. He told him he was going to do this.